Hi and welcome back to my openBIM with Revit video series. In the last video we exported an IFC from Revit using the standard settings, and we also had a look at the top level IFC entities, which are the project, the site and the building. Now these entities are special because they are not linked to physical objects inside of Revit, but actually serve as containers for all the objects in our IFC file. They also carry some overall information about the project, like the name, the coordinates, the address, and so on. What we want to do today is have a look how we can influence the naming and the default properties of these entities. What we want to be having a look at are the property sets. The property sets are a special IFC concept valid for all of the other entities as well. Therefore, we will have a separate video on this. Now let's have a look where we left off the last time. Since we will be having a closer look at the properties this time, I will be using the IfcSite viewer. This is an IFC viewer developed by a German university, and it looks a bit old school, but I find it has the most accurate and raw display of the IFC properties. The top entities are, as already mentioned, the project, the site and the building. And if we have a closer look at the properties, you will see that there are some default properties which are not populated. Note that this might look different in other viewers because some of these won't show you the properties which have no value. What we will do now is check how we can populate these properties when exporting from Revit. There is one main place in Revit to look at when you are looking for the properties of your project, site or the building, and that's the project information, which you will find in the Manage tab. By default, you won't have too many properties here, but there are already some which are automatically mapped when exporting an IFC and which you can easily recognize. Therefore, you can simply change the properties like the project status or the project number, and this will change the properties in your IFC file. But of course, there is still a bunch of information we can fill in. For this, however, we need to add new properties to the Revit file. Autodesk provides detailed shared parameter files within the Revit IFC toolset, which you can use to easily add IFC properties to Revit. Now let's go to the project parameters and see how we can add these. After you select shared parameter, you need to make sure that you are referencing the correct file. Revit will always remember the last shared parameter file you have used, and in my case it's already the correct one, but I want to show you where you can find it on your side. If you don't have this folder, make sure to check the Autodesk App Store and install the latest version of Revit IFC on your machine. Like for everything else, you'll find the links in the video description. In this file, there are all the additional IFC properties supported by Revit, and if you already know the name of the property you are looking for, you can just click on the first element in the list and then start typing the name of the property you are searching for, which is the fastest way to jump through the list. Now, if you're wondering how should you know the name of the property, many of these properties which are applied on the root level, like name, description, or the object type, simply have an IFC prefix in this list. So let's search for IFC description. The good thing when using shared parameters is that you don't need to worry about the data type, but you can of course change whether it is a type or instance property. If you want to apply something to the project information, it needs to stay an instance parameter, however, because the project information has no type. Note that you cannot change this option later. What you can change also at later point is the grouping. I always recommend to put everything in the IFC Parameters group to keep a good overview. Finally, you need to assign which categories should have this property. We'll go ahead at this point and select all categories because we can always use IFC description. This is also something you can change later if you choose to edit this parameter. We will repeat the same for the object type. Now this is a manual process, but also something you would do only once in your project template. There are of course also ways to add shared parameters in bulk using Dynamo, for example. Leave me a comment if you would be interested in a video on this. Now you might have already noticed that we only can add one IFC description and one IFC object type, but we have three entities: the project, the site and the building. The ones we have just added will only apply on the project level, and we need to use dedicated parameters for site and building. You can easily find these by searching for the properties that start with site or with building. Since these are Revit-specific properties which will be mapped upon IFC export, they don't have the IFC prefix. You could also review and add some of the other properties if you need them in your project. I'll simply proceed with building description and add it to the project information only and group it again under IFC parameters. After repeating the same for the building object type, I've also added site name, site description, and site object type to the category project information. If we now go back to the project information in Revit, we can fill in all these new properties and export again. One thing you can also add in the export settings is the site address. While there is a field for the address in the project information, you'll notice that this does not export to IFC. However, if you go to Modify Setup, you can edit the address to be used in the IFC file in the first tab and also directly update the project information when doing this. In the file header information, you can also add your name and the contact details if you want these to be displayed there. Note that the header information won't be visible in most IFC viewers, but you can view the header if you open the IFC file in a text editor. We'll stick with the standard settings now and reload the IFC file in the IfcSite viewer. IfcSite is also displaying all the groups and MEP systems separately in its tree structure, but we don't need these right now, so I'll simply close them. Looking at our top level entities, we can see that all of the properties have been populated as expected. This works also for the site entity, no matter if you have a topography object on the project or not. Since we do have a topography object in this project, let me show you a second way to add the properties to IfcSite. As for all the other entities, we can go ahead and use the generic IFC description and IFC object type, which we have already added to all the categories previously. I will now also add another property which is very often used, the IFC name. When exporting an IFC, all the entities get their name from the Revit family and type name. However, this can be easily overridden using the IFC name property, which means your entities in IFC can have different names from your families. Sometimes this can be a requirement for deliverables, and instead of renaming all of your families, you can simply override the names. Again, we'll assign IFC name to all the categories and add it to the group IFC Parameters. I wouldn't recommend adding all of your IFC parameters to all the categories, but with these default ones it makes sense because you will often need them. Now you can see that when we select the topography object in Revit, we can see the properties we just added and populate them. Note that these values will override the ones we set in the project information, so there is no need to delete these. Just keep this in mind for the case you try to edit the site properties in the project information at a later point. Now let's hit export and review the result again in the IfcSite viewer. As you can see, the name and the properties of the IFC site have changed now. Now, of course, there is a lot more to tell about the properties in IFC, but I hope this video gave you a good overview about the default properties for the project, the site, and the building. In the next video, we will go one step further in the hierarchy and have a closer look at the levels. The levels are also our final container for all building objects in our IFC file. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.